The way this... Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel, and also a happy new year to everybody. It is officially 2024. Yes, I am posting this video 2 weeks later than I would have wanted to, but it's fine. I told y'all my goal was to upload every week, but if I miss a couple weeks, don't be surprised. So, it already happened. It's fine. So we are going to keep the intro short and sweet today, since it's probably going to be a long video, because what we are going to do is we are going to go through my 2023 reading stats on Storygraph, as well as tier rank every single book that I read in 2023, and there were 62 books. So that's quite a lot. So let's just get into it. Okay, so let's first look at my stats on Storygraph. So I'm not going to go through the reading wrap-up that they do. I just like looking at the plain stats here. So here are all my goals. So my goal was 50 books, and I surpassed that with 62 books. Honestly, if I didn't get sick, I probably would have hit 100, because I hit 50 in August. Okay, next we have the pages goal. So my goal was 10,000 pages, and I actually read 16,812 pages. So that's crazy. That's 168%. And then for my hours goal, I had a goal of 100 hours in audiobooks, and I read 164.5 hours. So that is also a really crazy number. It's really weird when you just put all the numbers together. You know, it's one book, it's 2 books, but that's a lot of hours. How many days is that?
A few moments later.
That is 11 straight days of audiobook listening. That's nuts. Okay, so next we have all the moods. So my 2 biggest were emotional and adventurous, and that makes sense because I believe my top genre was fantasy, as well as funny. I guess so. I did read a lot of YA stuff, so a lot of it is probably considered in that genre. We also have mysterious, lighthearted, reflective, dark, tense, inspiring, informative, hopeful, sad, and that little last one, challenging. Interesting. I would say this checks out for sure. Okay, then we have pace. So 6% of them were slow, 42% were fast, and 52% were medium. This definitely makes sense. I definitely tend to read more. Once again, I read a lot of YA and have been reading a lot of YA, and those always tend to be more fast-paced than anything. Next we have page number. 39% were less than 300 pages. 50%, wow, split even, was between 300 and 499 pages, and then 11% were 500 plus. 5 books. Wow, that's a lot. I'm proud of myself. I feel like I read a good chunk of longer books than I normally do. Like I said, a lot of YA, those don't tend to be long, but I usually read a good couple of books that are pretty long, every year-ish. Next we have audiobook length. So less than 8 hours was 6%, with only 1. Next, which is the majority of them, 89% were between 8 hours and 15 hours and 55 minutes, which makes sense. That is what a majority of this this chunk of books are. And then 6%, which was only 1, was 16 hours or longer. Okay, next we have fiction versus nonfiction, which I like this distribution. So we have 85% fiction and 15% nonfiction. I think that's a decently good distribution. I would love to read more nonfiction, but more memoirs and stuff like that, because I have read a lot of these self-help and bettering yourself books like that, and I just honestly don't really think they're for me much, but I do love a good memoir. I've definitely realized that. So I'd love to read more memoirs like that. I love that. I'm definitely happy with this percentage here. All right, next, holy crap, we have genres, with my most being fantasy, which is 26, which, thinking back, absolutely checks out. Let's see, we also have young adult, which is, here's my gripe with this. Is young adult a genre? It's a category to me, right? So, does it really count as a genre? I don't know, but that was 19. I told y'all I read a lot of young adult. Then we have other ones, temporary, romance, middle grade, which once again is that's more of a category than a genre. These are probably all my Percy Jackson books. And then next we have LGBTQIA plus books, which makes sense with the romance, because most of what I read that is romance is queer. So these definitely check out. And then my least read ones, there's a lot here. Autobiography, business, crime, essays, history, religion, short stories, feminism, children's, dystopian, race, gender. Wow, I can't believe 26 fantasy books. That's a lot. That's a lot for sure. This graph always makes me laugh every year because it's usually always looks something like this. I would also like to expand into reading more genres than just fantasy. She is my favorite. And also, you know, I love a good contemporary lit fic. But I do have a ton of, like, Stephen King I've got to read and a bunch of other, like, horror and science fiction stuff I want to read. So I'm hoping to get to a lot of those this year, as well as classics. I'm really trying to knock those off this year. All right, next we have format. So 55% of the books were print, and then digital was 10%. Those are like the ebooks. And audio is 29%, which I'm actually surprised about because last year the audio chunk was a lot bigger. All right, next, my most read authors. So of course, in first place with 9, we have the Uncle Rick Riordan. Next we have Miss Turf. I did reread the Harry Potter series this year. I will talk about that more in the tier list ranking, but fuck this bitch, basically. Next is Z Brewer with 5. Those were the Chronicles of Vladimir Tod series, which is a personal guilty pleasure favorite of mine from childhood. I reread the series and I can confidently say I still love them. Next is Helen Huang. I did read the Heart Principle series, and they were surprisingly good for, like, straight romances. I really enjoyed them, had a fun time. Next is Yusei Matsui with 2. I am reading Assassination Classroom, the manga, so I'm making my way through that, so that's, hopefully I could get his number up a lot more this year, because I kind of want to make my way through that series. And last but certainly not least, we have Ashley Herring Blake with 2. I love this bitch so much. She writes sapphic novels that just really, they do it for me, for sure. Love her. And next we have this little chart of numbers of books, pages, and minutes, and this is by, like, month and stuff. So it looks like, wow, I read 9 books in January and April. That's pretty crazy. And then here you could kind of see, like, I swear. Okay. Oh, no, this is, okay. Because I was going to say, I got sick in August, so I was like, how? Like, I first got sick in August. So how do I have 7 books read? But it's because, and you guys will see this next week, I did a 24-hour readathon, and it was only, like, a couple days before I got sick. So I got, like, I think I read 6 books in that video. So this definitely checks out. But you can see here, this decline to now where I'm actually feeling better and reading again, but you could definitely see the decline here, which is pretty crazy. Here, my most pages read was in March with 3,512. That's nuts. And then, yeah, I'm surprised at the lack of audiobooks I listened to this year, obviously here and here, you know, NBD. But I'm definitely, this is surprising compared to, like, last year. I guess the year before. Oh my god, that's so weird. All right, and lastly, we have my star ratings, which once again, a ton of success this year because I reread a lot of favorites, read a lot of Percy Jackson. So my average star rating is 4.33, which is, like, crazy. So we have only 3 2-stars, 1 3-star, 6 3.5, which some of these are probably lower looking back, 19 4-stars, 5 4.5 stars, and 28 5-stars. So I know for a fact that 8 of these are Riordan books, and at least 5 of them are the Chronicles of Vladimir Tod. Those are, like, those ones are nostalgia 5 stars, and anything Rick is, like, biased 5 stars kind of thing, you know. We had a very, very successful year this year. And then also, I know I don't plug my Instagram a lot, but I did do this cute little, like, Spotify wrapped post, but based off of all these stats in my reading. So if you want to go check out my Instagram and check that out, it's in the little story highlight. So feel free to follow me, check that out. I do plan on posting there a ton more this year. I'm, like, really trying to come up with some cool ideas to do all that. So yeah, go check that out as well. Okay, now let's get into the tier list. All right, so we got all my tiers on the left-hand side here. So tier 1 is Uncle Rick. I had to make this one blue. If you know, you know. This is just because, so I read 9 Rick Riordan books this year, and I am extremely biased about Riordan books. So it just, like, didn't really feel fair to compare them to any of the other books I read this year, because to me, like, he is number one, nothing can top this. So this is a very biased, like, 5 stars, I love this man, this is my childhood kind of thing, you know? So he gets his own tier. Next, this is where we get into, like, the actual ranking of books. So first we have talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping. And I named this after that Lady Gaga meme.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, showstop.
And these are going to be, like, my favorites of the year, like, all-time favorites added to the favorites list. We do have a few of those, so that's good. Next is Oh Yes. These are, like, my 5 stars that, like, aren't all-time favorites, but were just, like, so good. Next we have Had a Fun Time. This is just going to be those, like, typical 4-star books. It was like, oh, these were really great. Not a favorite, but it was really good. And the next year we have Oh, That's Not. And this is based off that meme going around with Kelly Osbourne.
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that,
No.
you know what I mean?
And these are for the books that, like, were kind of good, but just, like, for the most part, missed the mark, and maybe had, like, a couple more bad things and good things, but had some things that saved them. The last actual tier is just pretty bad, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. These books were just really not good in my opinion. And lastly, we have Turf Alert. So this is, you know, what I was referring to before. So I did reread all the Harry Potter books this year, and like I said before, fuck J.K. Rowling. I hate that bitch. She is just extremely transphobic. I do not support her in any way. I do already have the books, so I didn't spend any money on them, and to me, that's the most important thing, is to not give her any, like, monetary gain in rereading them. First of all, I realized that a lot of what I enjoyed about the series wasn't necessarily from the books itself, but was from the community that it garnered and the friends that I made, because it was the first time that I had ever liked something that, like, other people had liked. So my favorite part of it really was the community, the fan fiction, Tumblr, you know, all necessarily, but I do want to put out that, like, I did read them. There's no need to lie about it, you know. I had the books already. There was no monetary gain on her part, so that is fine by me, but there's definitely parts where her views show through. You for sure cannot separate the art from the artist, you know? Okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into it. So I do have these, there's a little overview. I do have them ordered in the order that I read them. So let's just get right into it. So the first book I have here is Atomic Habits. And look, I know people, like, shit on these kinds of books, and I usually do too. However, this book, like, actually changed my life in a positive way. Like, I still think about what this book has to say. Like, I implemented, like, a lot of these things into my actual life that I learned from this book. So it is going to go into Oh Yes. Next, Ashley Parker Doesn't Fail by my love Ashley Herring Blake. This is obviously going into Oh Yes. She just keeps coming out with bangers. I love Astrid so much. She would be a book girlfriend for sure. Alright, next 2 books, we do have the first 2 Harry Potter books. Those are just going right down there. So next we have The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. This is going into Had a Fun Time. And so for me, I watched her Netflix series, which is basically the same thing as this book. So if you watch the series, I really don't think you need to read this book because a lot of it is redundant. That being said, though, I do use this a lot when I, like, declutter and stuff, and I like having the book to reference back to it. So that is why it's in Had a Fun Time. Next, we have our first bad book, My Policeman. Wow, I did not like this at all. I listened to the audiobook of it. I read this because the Amazon movie had come out with Harry Styles. I am a big 1D fan. You know, I'm very big on reading the book first, as I'm sure most of you are. And I was like, oh, okay, let me read it. This was just not good. And I think my biggest problem is it tries to be nuanced. And to me, the situation that happens in the book just isn't. It could be if the characters made better choices. I was gonna say smarter, but I think better is the right word. I just did not like it. I did not like the main character. There was a reveal that it made me angry. As a queer person, this book was just not... It was just pretty bad. and that's why it's going in this category. All right, next we got Prisoner of Azkaban, Into Turf Alert. Next, semi-last self-help book that I read in January, The Art of Stopping Time. This is also going in just pretty bad. So I originally bought this book when I was having like a really challenging time, like in, I'd say like freshman year of college. I just picked it up in Barnes & Noble. I like never really read it, so I tried to reread it last year, and it was just like terrible. A lot of things were really redundant. A lot of things didn't make sense. I didn't know you were supposed to follow it. Like, the way it does it is it's like a once a day kind of thing, but there are things that repeated and things that, like, you'd think something every day would be simple, but there were things that were, like, really obscure and hard to do. I'm like, how are you supposed to do this in a day? Like, what if you have work or something? Like, it just really didn't make sense to me. It maybe just makes sense for someone else. I read it in a short time period. I didn't read it over a year. So maybe if you do that, it'll work for you. It just did not work for me, unfortunately. So it is going in just pretty bad. Next, we have our first book going into talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping tier, and that is Wash Day Diaries. And this is a graphic novel about 4 women of color and their relationship to their hair, as well as each other, and like the bond that they form, like through the process of taking care of their hair and having that in common with each other. It was so beautiful to see like how much of a part of these girls' identity their hair is, and the bonds that form because of it. It was just beautiful. This is definitely like one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. This was just incredible. The art style with the hair was just like so incredible. You could see all the texture and everything in it. It was just so beautiful. All right, next we have The Kiss Quotient, and this is going into Had a Fun Time. So this was one that, like, you know, was going around on TikTok for a while, and I just, like, needed a book to listen to. So I was like, let me, like, try this one. And it was, like, really good. I tend to not like straight romances as much as queer romances, because I just find that they are not written as well, if I'm being honest. But these are written really well. There's amazing autism representation, and I think the relationships that form are showcased really well, and they tackle some like real life issues and like that each character kind of has to deal with, and I think they're once again all handled really well. And yeah, I just love them. Just like really fun and cute, but also had those like serious moments kind of thing. Next, I read a lot of bad books at the beginning of the year. We have The Midnight Library going into just pretty bad. Now, this book is like dearly beloved, and I don't get it. I felt like this book was just going, you're so sexy, don't kill yourself. Like it really just like, it just didn't do well in my eyes. In my opinion, I just don't think it was written well. Maybe Matt Haig is not for me. I know people love his stuff. I just think he's not for me. I didn't like the way it was written. There was like a couple of parts that I did like, but for the most part, I didn't like it. There's like one random really weird like sex scene. Obviously, it's not like written, but it happens, and it's like so out of place. It like gave me the ick, and I hate it because I really love the idea of this novel, but I need like somebody else to write it kind of thing. It was just not for me. Next, we have Where the Crawdads Sing, and this is going to be the first one in Oh, That's Not. And so, you know, I read this because of all the stuff that was like going on with the author and stuff. I was like, well, I need to figure out what the book is about. So I listened to it on audiobook, and I did really enjoy the narrator. I think they did a really good job. However, it was just like a little boring at times, and it was a little like wordy. It was definitely wordy. And I understand the need to build a plot and like a lifetime for this girl, but this is going to be one of the only books where I will refer you to watch the movie instead and cut out all the like wordy parts basically. So that was good in my opinion. All right, next we have this really obscure book called Junia. This is going to go in Had a Fun Time. So this is, I've had this book because I went to Catholic school like my whole life and took a bunch of theology classes because they were mandatory, and like we had to read books once in a while, and these were one of them that I still had on my shelf. So I was like, you know what, let me read it. Maybe it's actually good. And it was pretty good. I'll give it to the author. It was pretty good. It was like well written and stuff. Obviously this is just not like my subject of choice. It was a little boring at times, but I did think the story was really interesting. So it is going in, had a fun time. All right, next we got another Harry Potter. Down in turf alert. Next we have the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. It feels weird to put this in had a fun time because I did not have a fun time because it's about slavery. So it's going in, oh yes. So, you know, for me, if I'm learning about history, I prefer to learn it like this. Like firsthand accounts from people who were there instead of reading it from a textbook. Because when you read it from a textbook, first of all, our textbooks are very whitewashed in my opinion. So I empathize more when I get a first person perspective because you get to understand what they went through a little bit more easily coming from that person. So this was just like really informative, written really well. Enjoyed reading it. Would love to read other books like this if anyone has any recommendations. Honestly, also required reading for like everybody. Okay, once again, another Harry Potter. Down in turf alert. Next, we have genderqueer. This is going in had a fun time. So this was definitely like a more informative experience, and reading this person's like life story was like, it was very emotional as a queer person who gets it but also doesn't get it. There are obviously things I could relate to and things that were just like completely new to me. So this one was also a learning experience for sure, and it was really good. Next, we have I Am Number 4, which is a book I've read in my childhood and loved, but unfortunately is going into oh that's not, because I did not really enjoy it this time around, unfortunately. So I remember really loving this, and it was on my shelves, and I'm really trying to go through all my books again so I can like get rid of stuff. And I was like, oh my god, I love this, let's read it. I got the audiobook because, you know, I had read it before, so I was like, okay, we'll do the audiobook. The literal first 50% was horrendous. I do have to say I really enjoyed the second half of the book when like all the action ramps up, but the entire first half of the book, you know, he's in school and stuff and like trying to figure out all these things, and it just reads like somebody who has never talked to a child in their life. Very much like an old dude wearing a backwards hat. Definitely gave that. So I just could not get past it. But once again, I did really enjoy the second half of the book. So I've been like really debating on whether I want to finish the series, but I just don't know. The first half of it was so bad. Okay, next is Fallen, and this one I've also read before in my youth. And this one is going into Had a Fun Time. So this is one of those like typical Twilight ripoff books from like that era. However, like this was so fun to read. I listened to the audiobook once again. And this is just like trashy in the best way. It was poorly written, the characters sucked, and I completely loved it. Once again, Harry Potter, bam, turf alert. Next, we have Felix Ever After. This is going into Had a Fun Time. So this is a story about a trans boy who basically gets outed, if I'm remembering correctly, and like dealing with that and like friendships and all that stuff. Very YA. I loved pretty much everything about this book except how he acted like I read this a while ago. It's a little hard to remember, but he acted like a certain way at the end with his friends. I was just like, oh, I just don't like that. Like I felt like it was a little bit unnecessary, so that's why it's not like in the oh yes. However, I loved most of the book. And any queer person absolutely saw that ending coming, but it didn't make it any less worth it. So this was just like really good. Highly recommend it as well. And once again, Harry Potter, that is the last one in the turf alert, so we don't have to worry about that category anymore. Thank God. Okay, and then The Last Apprentice we have here. Once again, also going to go into Had a Fun Time. Wow, we're gonna have a lot in Had a Fun Time. Don't worry about it. So this is the book that I've had on my physical TBR the longest, like has to be like over 15 years, because I think just like my cousin had an extra copy and he gave it to me. It was just one of those books I never got around to, but I read it this year, and like it is like a YA kind of thing, but it was like really good. I read it in a day kind of thing. It was just really fun, and I really enjoy stories like this. Like it's a little bit medieval, and it's got like these witchy themes and everything, and this like fantasy, like, but a little bit of a dark fantasy aspect. And one of my favorite things about it was that it was dark, but it was still like age appropriate, and I think it takes a really good writer to do that. So I did love it. I am going to probably read the rest of the series, but there's like 15 other books so probably won't finish it this year. but would love to finish the series eventually. Hopefully they just like don't get bad if there's 15 books. Next we have The Bride Test, which is the next book in the Kiss Quotient. This is also going to Had a Fun Time. Honestly, same review as the Kiss Quotient, like really good representation with issues and all these things that the characters had to deal with, but also had those like fun and sweet moments between the characters, but included like a lot of actual real life. It wasn't like a fairy tale, I'll say. And I definitely think I enjoy when my romance books are more like realistic as opposed to like fairy tale aspect, because it just makes them more interesting. All right, next is Who Moves My Cheese, and this is going to Oh That's Not. So this was one that a couple of these, like me and my mom have like a little book club that we do, so this was one of the ones that we read. Actually, so we read Atomic Habits, Midnight Library, and Who Moves My Cheese. There's another one we read. I don't even remember which one it was. This is one of those self-help books that just like don't really do it for me. I felt like I didn't really gain anything from reading it. Basically, like to me, like the information that was in here, I was like, yeah, and you know, but like I get why it helps people and why it is like useful and stuff, but it just like once again wasn't really for me, but I could see the appeal. All right, now the next literal 6 books are Riordan books. So we're just gonna get these up here. So we have the first The King Chronicles, so we have the Red Pyramid, the Throne of Fire, and the Serpent Shadow. These were just like fucking incredible. I might even argue and say this is my favorite Riordanverse series, simply because the books just kept getting better and better and better. You know, like I said, oh, the first book was good, how is the second one gonna top it? And I said, oh, the second book's great, how is the last one gonna top it? And it just like kept doing it. These were just like really incredible. I loved learning about the Egyptian mythology. I felt like these kids were so cool. I really related to Sadie as well. So I just like really, really loved it. Next was a little novella, The Singer of Apollo, that is like between Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus, I think. Just like a little novella where he helps Apollo with like a teeny tiny quest. It was really funny. It was like 30 pages. I loved it. And then I started the Trials of Apollo series, which if y'all don't know, Apollo is my godly parent. So I was extremely, extremely excited about this. And I do love the way that Rick portrays Apollo in this just like very, very funny and unserious way, and he's just so full of himself and he thinks he's the best. And when he gets casted down to earth because of the events of Heroes of Olympus, which I will not spoil, it just makes for like a really, really entertaining story. I will say I wish the first book was longer, and that was my one gripe with it. However, you can see it is very, very clearly setting up for the rest of the series. It is more of a like prequel to the next 4 books, as opposed to like book number 1 in a series kind of thing. But yeah, we'll get some more of those in a little bit. Next is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. This is going into Had a Fun Time. Now, last year I read the Brown Sisters trilogy, and those were like top tier romance books for me. Like those are up there with like the Ashley Herring Blake, and those are straight romances. So that's how you know that they're good, if I like them and they're straight romances. Those are just like really, really cute. It was like friends to enemies to like friends again to lovers, and it was just so fun. This was just one of those books where it was just like I just had a fun time. This is truly the epitome of this category. Next, we have The Heart Principle, which is the last book in the Kiss Quotient series. Once again, same exact review as the other 2. This was really good. I love the nuance of real life with the romance. I really loved all the characters throughout this series. These were just like really, really good books. Next, we finally have our second book in Talented, Brilliant, Incredible, Amazing, and Show-Stopping, and that is My Sweet Girl by Amanda J. Atissa. So this one and the last book and the next 3 books I read for Read with Cindy's Asian Readathon, and I do have a video for that, so if you want like a full review, go over there. This is like it's more of a thriller, and it starts off as this like almost paranormal thriller, but then it evolves into something else, and that something else is like one of my favorite things in horror. And this twist is just like so incredible. I literally still think about this book to this day. This was just like, I just like am at a loss for words for how good this book was. And in the same note, we have our next book that is Talented, Brilliant, Incredible, Amazing, and Show-Stopping, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This has to go like here. This is my favorite book of the year. Once again, this is another book I just have not been able to stop thinking about since I read it. It was literally incredible, show-stopping, like all these things and more. And as a gamer girl myself, there was a lot of little Easter eggs that I love that made it like really fun to read. The characters were so lovable but also so real and nuanced, and their relationships were just woven together so beautifully. This book was just like a beautiful, beautiful masterpiece. I will just never stop thinking about it. I read it in a 24-hour time period, and I stayed up until 7 a.m. to finish it kind of thing. Like, this is like a once-in-a-while book that you got. It was just that good. Okay, so next we have I Am a Lala. This is also going to go into OES. So once again, like I said before in a couple earlier books, this was a book that was more informative to me than anything. Malala is just like, it's really funny because like she's my age, I think, or like a year or two, give or take, and to think about like how the things she has to deal with versus the things that I have to deal with was like really, really eye-opening to me. These are things that like I already knew, but once again, when I hear that first count experience, it is like it hits me a little bit more. But this was just like, once again, really incredible, really, really well written. Next we have Clara and the Sun. This is also going to go into OES. This book is dystopian in an unusual way, but this was like really, really good. The writing was so beautiful, and I don't know if anybody else ever experiences this, but when books are translated, to me, there is a sense of, when it's already really well written, there is almost a sense of like mourning that I will probably never be able to read this in its originally written language, because I can imagine that when it's so beautifully translated, it must be even more beautiful in its first language. But it was just so incredible. All right, next we have She Gets the Girl. This is also going into Had a Fun Time. This was just so freaking cute. This is based on the two authors' actual like love story. There's really not much to say about this, although I do have a gripe with it's always advertised as enemies to lovers, and it's like really not. It's more of like a slight rivals to like friends to lovers kind of thing, you know? That's more of a pet peeve than anything though. This was like really, really good. Such like a perfect YA sapphic book. Once again, a book that like I really wish I had growing up kind of thing. Next is A Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This is also going into Had a Fun Time. I told y'all this was going to be a big category. So this was awesome. I really love this. This is a book with a lot of nuance and a lot of the characters go through a lot of things that, once again, for me, like I have some things I've dealt with and some of the things I haven't dealt with. There's parts that I can relate to, and there's also parts that I can just like learn from. This is like really well written. I love the main character. She is adorable, but also like a badass in the best way. I also related heavily because just being a closeted person in Catholic school is a challenge, especially when you don't even know. Okay. Next, we have How Y'all Doing by Leslie Jordan. This is going into Had a Fun Time. This was, R.I.P. to the king. This was just such like a sweet and fun book. He narrates the audiobook, and it's basically just him going through like these little stories of fame and like celebrity kind of thing, and like people he's met and like things he's been through, and just like these funny little anecdotes, and it was just like so heartwarming and so good. All right, next we have Rebecca. I think this is going to go into OES. This is one of the books that like I was told to read in school and absolutely did not, because who wants to do that? I've also been going through this challenge of like reading all those books that I should have read in school, because I feel like I owe it to like younger me as a reader. I also just think I would enjoy those books more now. But so this was one of those books, and me and my mom were supposed to read it for our book club, but she has not read it yet. I'm calling you out, Mom. This was just like a labor of love to read. It took a while to read. I have this little tiny mass market paperback, and the font is so small. Felt like it took forever to read, but this was just like so beautifully written. It is one of those like gothic romancy books, but it is also, I don't know, it's just like it keeps you on your toes because you really don't know like what's going on half the time kind of thing, but like in a good way. Also completely unreliable narrator, which is one of my favorite tropes in reading. So this was just like an incredible book. Next, we are returning to the just pretty bad category with Wilder Girls. This was not good. So I had originally, like, picked up this actual book because Leonie from the Book Leo recommended it, and I do feel like I have a lot of similar taste as her. So she recommended this, like, in a video a long time ago. And I was like, oh, that sounds good, I'll read it. To be fair to this book, it is essentially like a Lord of the Flies retelling, and I do not like Lord of the Flies. And I did go into this book knowing that, so this might be a me personal thing. But I don't know, I didn't think it was good. I listened to the audiobook. It was like really, and let me also include that I tried to read it physically and couldn't. I did not like the writing style. It is YA, but I did feel like it wasn't graphic enough in a way. Like, I felt like there are ways to get around it. Once again, like The Last Apprentice, for example, like I said, it's dark while still being age appropriate. In this book, I felt like it was just like, there could have been so many more details. It could have been like so much more gruesome. There was like one part that was really gruesome, which I did like. And the ending was like a little, like, I liked the part leading up to the ending, and then the actual ending felt like weird. It felt unfinished. This is the only time I've ever felt like a book needed to be, like, incredibly longer. But yeah, this was just, like, not for me. I know some people that love it. It's just not for me. Okay, next we have the next Trials of Apollo book. This is The Burning Maze. I don't understand what it is about Rick and writing devastating third novels in 5-novel series, but he is not seeing the gates of heaven with this one. Sorry. You gave me Grover, but at what cost? Alright, next we have A Court of Frost and Starlight. I am going through this series, and unfortunately this one is in, oh, that's not. The actual book itself wasn't bad. I liked the story, you know, I think it was like a fun, cute little thing. However, it just felt like extremely unnecessary. You know, I was like, why am I reading this? Why are we here? I'm glad the characters had like a fun little vacation away from the thrills and horrors of war, but like, this was totally just a cash grab. And I get it, this girl is famous as fuck now. I would do the same thing, but it just felt like one of those like beach episodes of an anime that they include because they're waiting for the manga to catch up kind of thing, you know, like, not bad, but like, you really don't have to read it. Next we have On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and this is in fact going into the oh yes category. This is just so like objectively beautifully written. I listened to the audiobook as well as read it with my eyes, because Ocean Vuong does narrate the audiobook. So whenever the author narrates, I prefer to listen because like you get to hear their story in their voice, and that's important to me. So I mean, this was just beautiful, like just the themes, the writing, the actual stories, the way it's woven together, just everything about this is so completely beautiful and like stunning. It is just like, just absolutely incredible. That's really all I could say. I look very much forward to reading his writing. Next we have another one in talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, and that is Bunny. This is for the crazy girls. This is for the Lulu girls. I fucking love this goddamn book. Just like reading it, I was just like, and I was like, yeah, it was just like, it had me on my toes. This is very much like, oh, I said something, this was in my 5-star predictions. I was right about it. I said something like, it's Mean Girls. Oh, it's Mean Girls meets like Midsummer. Oh my god, it was so good. It's got that like culty vibe. It's got that like, oh, like cute in a sinister way vibe, if that makes sense. I need more books like this. I need more unhinged women. I need more unhinged women in cults that they, you know, they don't even know what's going, like, this is just like everything I could ever want in a novel. This and My Sweet Girl, actually, those are two novels that like, if I was going to point you in a direction of what I want to read, it's those for sure. Next we have Deadly Little Secret. This is going to go into Had a Fun Time. Now once again, like Fallen, this is a book that came after like the Twilight Renaissance and was very much like copying Twilight. I mean, this is like down to, this one specifically, Fallen, had a little bit more its own thing going on and more just like inspiration from the actual story of Twilight. This book was Twilight with a different name and characters and stuff. There was this weird like stalker thing, and it was like this character the whole time. I did say I saw it from a mile coming. However, like Fallen, this is a book that is terrible, is written badly. The characters suck. I mean, this bitch's friend kept leaving her for some dude, and she was in like a major crisis, and I fucking loved it. So it was a really easy, like, fun read. It was very short, and I more so want to keep reading it to see if it follows the Twilight archetype, because in the second book, it's literally like New Moon. Like, it's like the guy goes off and she has to like fend for herself, and she ends up like being friends with this other guy. Like, it is literally New Moon. So I'm more like reading it to see if it follows the Twilight story, but I did really have fun and enjoy it. I wouldn't be doing it if I did not enjoy it. All right, next we have Assassination Classroom Volume 4. This is Volume 3, my bad. Is it? Yes. So this is also going to have a fun time. This is just like a fun little manga I'm getting through just to like pass the time when I don't have anything to read. It's super fun. I love the story. I think the characters are written really well. There's a lot of like nuance in a way to a lot of the characters, and I love stuff like that. Next we have the last 2 books in Trials of Apollo. There's going in the Rick tier, obviously. These books, like the last 2 books in this series, possibly one of Rick's best writing ventures like ever. I mean, the way the villains are literally like so scary in a way that like Kronos, for example, and Percy Jackson wasn't that scary to me because I know it's not real. These characters, they were like people, like they felt real, like a real person could do this to you. It was really, they were like actually scary. So I absolutely have to hand it to Rick for that. These books are incredible. I think they ended perfectly. It felt like a nice little bow around the entire series, and everything was wrapped up extremely beautifully, in my opinion, and like everything made sense. Everything was leading up to it, and then you really get to see Apollo's character arc throughout all of it, and it is just like writing unlike anything I've ever seen before. It made me love Apollo like even more. Okay, next. So we have these 5 are all gonna be together because they are a series, and I am going to basically review them as a series, and I read them all one after the other. So this is the Chronicles of Vladimir Todd. These are all going into, oh yes, this is one of my like absolute favorite series from childhood. Vampire Boy. This was for the emo kids. This spoke to me as a child, and it was really weird rereading this because the first time I read it, I was younger than Vlad, who in the first book is 13. You know how old I am, and I just read this? I'm 25. I'm closer in age to his aunt than him. I did not like how that made me feel. It's very rare that I feel old. But this is a series I just I'm completely in love with it. This is included in my 24-hour readathon that is coming out. You will see like a bigger review of that. I just completely love the series. The character development throughout the series, as well as each book, the stakes get higher and higher. So if you don't know, these books take place like every year of his life. So it goes from like 8th grade to like 12th grade. As it goes through, the stakes get higher and higher as he gets older and older, as well as how the fan base got older and older. So I think it really grew with the fans in a way that like a lot of things struggle to, and that was just like really great writing in my opinion. Basically really still love it. Okay, next we have Nimona. This is going into talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping. So this is a graphic novel about this girl who is basically like a shapeshifter, and she becomes like a sidekick to this very famous villain, and it's just about like their relationship and the things they have to do, the adventure they go on, and it's like really, there's a lot of nuance. I love things with nuance, very obvious at this point, but I love these things with nuance with characters because it just makes them feel so real, and it's just so complicated in a good way. But the story was woven together very nicely. This was just like really good. I'd highly recommend it, and I still have to watch the movie, so verdict's out on that one, but love the graphic novel. Okay, next we have Angels and Demons. This is going into Had a Fun Time. Here's the thing. I absolutely loved this book. Like, loved it. I listened to the audiobook because they are fucking long books, this entire series. I do plan on reading the entire series because I love them so much. However, I listened to audiobooks in 2 times speed, right? But the actual, like, length of this audiobook is, like, 19 hours. And the events in this book take place over a single day. So if you can do math, you might realize the events in this book were shorter than the length of the audiobook. Why? What was the reason for that? This man is lucky that this book was actually good. Once again, I loved it, but it dragged on and on and on. It was very wordy, for sure. Everything was perfect up until like the last 2 sentences. I was like, oh my god, you really had to fucking end it like that. Like, it reminded me that like a man wrote this book, and it was just like, come on, dude, like, what the fuck? But like, I loved, I'll say 95% of the book. I loved like the theme of like art and religion and cults and all this stuff. I loved all that, but it was just like, it was just really long. Next we have Volume 4 of Assassination Classroom. Once again, just really fun. Love these books. Just something to pass time every once in a while. Getting into manga. Shit like that. Next we have Goosebumps, the Campfire Collection. This is just like a little, like 3 of the Goosebumps books. I got this at a horror convention that I went to. It was like $3. I was like, fuck it, let me get that. They're just really fun to read. I love reliving the childhood, especially because I didn't read a lot of Goosebumps when I was younger because it scared me, which is really funny as someone who loves horror now. Horror, like, obviously I was a child, really used to scare me. So it's kind of like catching up on them. But let me tell you something. As an adult, these books are scary. Like, they rarely end with like happy endings or the way you want them to end kind of thing. Like, they're low-key still really scary. They were really, really good though. Love them. Next, we have Iris Kelly Doesn't Date in Talented, Brilliant, Incredible, Amazing, and Show-Stopping. Ashley Herring Blake, you have outdone yourself. Listen. Iris, look, Delilah is my book girlfriend, Ashton is my book girlfriend, but Iris is me. So this book hit hard. This hit home in a lot of places, and it was just like so beautifully written. The issues that Iris dealt with were like, once again, very, very well written, very realistic, speaking from experience, but in a way that's like, doesn't make you as the reader feel bad for also feeling those things. It was very like soft and gentle with the way it approached these feelings that Iris was having. I listened to the audiobook for most of my romances. This audiobook narrator was gold. I mean, she was so fucking good. Just like, and there's points where like you could hear her getting emotional over the text. Just so beautiful. And there's one line in here that just like completely broke me, and Ashley Herring Blake will be hearing from my therapist. And next we have Kiss Her Once for Me. This is going to have a fun time. This is just really, really cute, you know, Christmassy romance. You know, it's like fake dating with like a love. It's not even a triangle, it's like a square. But yeah, it wasn't like the best sapphic book I've ever read, but I did really enjoy it, and I do love the winter theming and all that, and the events that come because of being snowed in, or Christmas, or the, you know, dealing with your family on the holidays, you know, things like that. I think we're really, really good. Once again, not one of the best sapphic books I've ever read, but I'd rather have sapphic books like that than none at all. Okay, and my very last book, a very hard hitter, was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is absolutely going into Talented, Brilliant, Incredible, Amazing, Show-Stopping. In memoirs like this, I hate to say that I love them because the events that it is based around are terrible and terrifying and horrendous, and I can't imagine going through what Chanel Miller has had to go through with her case. But the way that she was able to take her story and turn it into something beautiful like this book, it is just incredible, and a true feat of like how like strong she is as a person, and how strong like we as women can be, and even as strong as victims can be, despite things that have been like put in their way. And she puts perfect emphasis on that everything was happening to her, like her life was ruined and she was trying to get past it, and she like just like couldn't. I honestly feel like this should be like required reading for everybody, because I think it would lead to a lot more empathy dealing with cases like this, because a lot of times women and victims are not believed, and to hear a story, I don't know how anybody could possibly like hear a story like this and not feel like empathy for the victim and not believe them. This book really hit for sure. Tears within the first hour. And I listened to the audiobook, and she does narrate it, so I do have to recommend it. The actual like narration of it reminded me a lot of I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. There are times in both of these stories where both of them, they start getting choked up at what they're saying, and it's just in those like really vulnerable moments, and it's just like that makes it not me tearing up, that really like reminds you that these are like real people who are dealing with the real consequences of these real actions that people took against them. It was extremely beautiful, and I hope a lot more people start to read this book. It was just that good. Possibly one of the best books objectively that I have ever read. Okay, and on that sad note, here is the tier list. I had a really good year because 4 out of 6 of the actual rating tiers are good. Like these are like great 4-star books. Anything under is like 3.5. This is only 8 books out of 62 minus C7. You know, like that is a really good year. And like I said, I believe my star rating was 4.33 average. Like, that is incredible. Okay, and with that being said, my voice hurts. We are done here. I hope you have all had a happy new year, and will continue to have a happy and healthy new year as well. Also, I just want to say my last 2 videos got like hundreds of views, and I've gained like a bunch more subscribers, so I say hello to everybody, and thank you so much for all the love on those last 2 videos. Like, I just can't believe the way they blew up. Like, I am amazed. I really am amazed. So thank y'all for all the love and all that stuff. But yeah, like I said earlier, I am going to try posting on my Instagram and possibly TikTok more often, so feel free to follow me over there. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Once again, thank you guys all so much for the love. Continue to have a nice and happy and healthy new year, and don't forget to take care of yourselves today. Bye.